But I digress. So what's funny about Trump crying about the current economic climate is white folks will set up a game, force you at gunpoint to play. And then when you start winning, they want to fucking cry foul. They want to cry foul. So this whole crying about tariffs and other countries taking advantage of us is literally foreign countries beating the United States at a game they dictated everyone play. The reason why there are sanctions and a blockade on Cuba, Venezuela, the reason why the United States invaded Iraq, the reason why even they took down Libya, and they're fighting proxy wars from Central Europe throughout the Middle East and even the African continent is because certain leaders and certain economies did not want to align with the new American century and said, we don't want our economy to exist to generate profit and concentrate wealth at the top. We want to create an economy oriented towards meeting the needs of our citizens. That's why Maduro is called the new Hitler. No other reason. Because you don't privatize. If you try to privatize. So it's really sick that black folks are sitting here, yeah, Trump is saving us from himself. And here's the other side of that. When Trump is like, I want to do tariffs, ask yourself, why did all these businesses, why did manufacturing and production and all of this shit that used to happen here, from steel to televisions to superconductors, why are they made overseas? Automobiles made overseas. And then in the United States, for propaganda purpose, they had these things called screwdriver factories. And a screwdriver factory is you work in this factory, but everything comes ready-made. So you work in a car factory in the United States, and the dashboard, the wheels, the rims, the train system, the brake lines, the computer screen, the seats, the frame, the axle, all that shit comes into the factory already put together. So all you do is like take all these parts and screw them together. You're not really manufacturing the car. You're compiling or you're creating, putting together the parts when all the components are made overseas. Right? And so what Trump is saying is, I want you to bring industry back to the United States. And everybody's like, yeah, he's bringing jobs back. But you don't look at the reason why Trump kicked the jobs out, why the jobs left. Not Trump, but the capitalists. Back from the 30s, the 40s, the 1950s, and the 1960s, the United States had the labor struggle. There were several struggles overlapping. And you know how white folks love to piggyback on black folks. So, you know, when black folks are like, hey, we're going to have us a struggle for our humanity, our civil and legal rights. And white women were like, hey, let's have a women's suffrage movement. But at the same time, there was the women's suffrage movement and the black civil rights struggle. You had the labor struggle. And the labor struggle was like, we want an 8-hour workday. We want pensions. We don't want employers to have a right to just fire anybody. We want, if I need protective equipment, I need either the government will give me a tax break on the equipment. I can write off my equipment on the taxes, or my employer has to pay for it. My employer has to give me informed consent if I'm going to be exposed to toxins at my job. If I'm injured at the job, the employer has to pay for the health care. And if I'm injured permanently, then the employer has to take care of me. All these rules. And then for the environment, whatever toxins that come out of your from your manufacturing process, you can't just put it in the river. You can't just throw it out on the land. There are regulations. There is oversight. There are inspections. There are certifications. There are penalties and fees and fines and even incarceration. And that's why U.S. manufacturing went overseas, because they're able to treat workers like slaves and treat the ecosystem and environment like a dumping ground. And Trump is, at the same time he's saying, bring back the jobs, Trump is literally saying, I'm getting rid of the federal government, the federal regulations, the federal inspections. He just wrote an executive order saying every new regulation that's proposed, you have to eliminate 10 regulations. And I know, because we are spoiled in many ways. We, in our entire lives, if you were born in the 70s, if you were born in the 80s, you were born in the 90s, your entire life, you have benefited from policies and regulations and concessions from the state that you didn't have to fight for. Now, I know there's some black folks that are pre-Jim Crow. I know some black folks that are pre-labor laws. I know there's some women here that are pre-Roe v. Wade, born after Roe v. Wade, and had the right to abortion their whole lives and be like, yeah. So we've taken these things for granted. And the education system has not taught us about labor, about black struggles, black rebellion, and have not taught us about what civics and how the government actually function. And most of us, when we interact with the government, it's through an overseer situation. If you're going to interact with a government official, it's some underpaid, overworked DMV person, or like you said, your taxes and your police, but you don't see the people that go into the poultry plant and look at all the tumors and examine the chicken meat for urine burns, ammonia burns, I'm sorry. But anyway, I ain't even gonna get into what the government protects you from, because y'all fell into Reagan's where the government can't do anything. So all that to say, Trump is saying, hey, I'm going to reduce American workforce to the same status and make American workers cooperative with, you want to get to Kevin Samuels. You have to wait. You have to wait. I don't worry. I'm going to get to your Lord and Saviors. Y'all have to wait. I'm dealing with this. And this is a Kevin Samuels follower, by the way. But this mentality, fascist mentality, but let's keep going. So anyway, Trump is like, I'm going to make American workers competitive with foreign workers by saying I'm going to take away all the worker protections. You're going to lose the right to unionize. You're going to lose the access to an 8-hour. Many of y'all like it's lost already. Many of us have already lost it. And it's like, I'm removing environmental protections. Dump it wherever you can dump it. You can put all the lead, the mercury, dioxin, nuclear waste, dump it wherever, because it's all about the money. Let's get paid. Because he's a sociopath, and he's an old man. And he's, if you read the Iceman's Inheritance, where a lot of these psychopathic white men think that the world began when they're born and the world will cease when they die. They have no concept of kinship, eternity, or even real legacy. But I digress. So anybody that's like, yeah, the trade deals, he's going to stop us from taking advantage of Americans. No, this is a war. Trump's conflicts is oligarch versus oligarch. Neither one of them. Trump's not fighting for the people. And if you're dumb enough to think that, goddamn. Okay, where's the American goods? Okay, and 47, also deporting illegal immigrants committing crimes. First of fucking all, migrants, refugees, they have a lower instances of crime than the average U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens commit crimes at a higher per capita rate than migrants. Number one. The issue is, if with our sensationalist tabloid corporate journalism, that if there is a crime committed by someone who is a Muslim, someone who is transgender or gay, someone who is black, someone who is migrant status or refugee status, the algorithm, the corporate white racist algorithm, will boost that story. I mean, what was it? It was just some, I'm ashamed that I forgot. There was some heinous crime just committed, and it just came and went. So they understand, if you're a journalist and you're trying to get views, and you can attack Muslim extremists commits crime. Now, if a Christian extremist commits a crime, they won't say the Christian part. They'll just say man commits crime. And we fall for it. And it's really insane that you can find a slave that gets angry when someone trespasses on the plantation. And it's even more insane that the very Americans who cry about illegal immigration ain't got shit to say with U.S. violation of sovereignty of other nations. The United States doesn't send its citizens to other nations. It sends its toxic products. It sends its militaries. It sends its drones. So if you only care about the sovereignty of and territorial integrity of your own nation, why should anybody else care about yours? But it's really stupid, because I can't think of one issue. The only immigrants that are causing problems for African people collectively are the ones that came over on a Nina, Maria, Santa Maria, what are them fucking boats? You know, the goddamn Pilgrims, or the ones that came over like Trump's grandfather came over through Ellis Island. And I even said, because when Bill Clinton did welfare reform, and when Bill Clinton was elected to office and he put forth his welfare reform, I had me a little job in Raytown, Missouri. And I had went to school, graduated, got a certificate, got a little professional job. And I had asked some white folks that I know were big time in favor of welfare reform. And I asked several of them face to face, how did the welfare reform, cutting off healthcare, cutting off food supplementation, food stamps, housing vouchers, and reducing the rate of benefits, I said, how did it improve your life in any way? So when you're going, we've already had one mass deportation. Believe it or not, Obama was doing mass deportation. And you ask the average black person, how has your life improved through mass deportation? I digress. I guess black people don't like him because he ain't smiling and shucking and jiving. See, we don't like him because he ain't to be our friend. Like I said before, I'd rather have a true enemy than an untrue friend any day. So he's saying why is Trump your enemy? So anyway, black people don't even comprehend what's happening. We have no real concept of what's being done and why it's being done, even though it's happening in our face. I've been saying this quote every show, and I guess I'll just have to get that shit tatted on my skin. Black people, we've been in this country the longest, and we understand it the least. We've been in this country the longest. And this is what I say, where we have a lot, the white majority in this country has gone fascist. And fascist indoctrination has come rapidly. And like everything else white people do, everything white people done, every type of hysterics white people have gotten involved in, there has been a significant proportion of black people who follow suit, who will follow suit. And the only dysfunctions and psychosis that black people have not followed white people into are ones that white people exclusively and explicitly bar black people from. So you will have black conservatives who join groups like the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys because they allow for minorities. But the KKK and the National Front don't allow for it. So black people join the MAGA movement. Black people convert to Christianity. Not only do black people convert to Christianity, black people convert to evangelical right-wing, hyper-nationalistic Christianity. Black people not only join the military, but they join the various military factions and ideological groups. Black people join fraternities and sororities. And if we can't get into what white folks are doing, we'll create our own Greek. If white folks won't let us be Greeks in their house, we start acting Greeks in our own house. There is no white dysfunction or psychosis that black people have not. And now I'm not attacking black people for this, because we are under the same system of indoctrination and we have even less resources to fight it. So black people, we're under the same blanket of indoctrination. And not only are we on the blanket of, because the most indoctrinated, the most heavily propagandized population in this country are white people. The average white person walks around this country completely ignorant of the truth of their nation and completely delusional about where they stand and what they've done. They don't have fundamental facts about the nation, the geography. It is just insane to me how ill-informed. Now, we don't look at white majority as ill-informed because we go out and do everything. Some black folks are going to jail from forging paperwork so they black kids can go to predominantly white schools. And because white people have the power and the money, and the propaganda of the United States is, if you're good and you're smart, then you get power and money. And we believe people with power and money have higher level of intelligence. They have higher level of worthiness. Now, some would say a level of morality, but even if they lack morality, even if you know they're corrupt like Trump, then we believe they have a higher level of discipline. They take more risk, they make more sacrifice, and they get less sleep. Steve Harvey telling black people, don't sleep. If you want to be rich, there's a man that wakes up at 4 a.m. You need to wake up at 3 a.m. if you want to be rich. So we believe the rhetoric, white folks believe the rhetoric, and we all feed this nonsense back and forth to each other. And there's this rhetoric that wealth is a byproduct of being really smart, working really hard, making sacrifice, taking risks, while everybody else is not willing to invest and not willing to risk their money. You put your money up, when being wealthy in this country is about theft, corruption, hoarding. There is no legacy wealth in this country that is not tied to atrocities, not one place, not one time. But we even believe it and we teach it to our kids. And then we don't even know what wealth is. We don't even define. My wife in one of her classes, I don't remember which one, she says, raise your hand if you're middle class. And every hand in the classroom goes up. And then she's like, raise your hand if you're in the economic 1%, 10%, 50%, 80%. And so then she goes and writes the characteristics of middle class on the wall. Because some of us think we're middle class because we won't drink. We drink lattes instead of Folgers with the favorite crystals. We don't even know what it means. And then she says always, just about every hand goes down in the classroom. Because we don't even understand our status. We are not class conscious. And class conscious does not just mean you fail to be hostile to the rich, which you should. If you're not rich, you should be hostile to the rich. But you don't even understand what role you play in the systems and institutions that govern your life. And so everybody's walking around with delusional. But even the biggest racist, KKK, skinhead, MAGA leader, understands that amongst black people, they have what they've come to call like-minded minorities. The federal government, the FBI, that Trump is going to stop from harming us, the FBI and CIA, they do these risk assessments. And in all the risk assessments, they're looking at everything, because black people say, ain't no difference between Biden and Trump. Ain't no difference between Democrat and Republican. But white folks understand, if you're going to conquer and rule, you've got to understand the intricacies and delicate balances and imbalances. And so they look and say, well, who are the hostile factions in the black community? Which black people are discontent with what we've given them, the opportunities we've given them, what they've gained, what Dr. King won for? What black people are discontent? And then how do they intend to respond to that discontent? But more importantly, then, who's discontent and what do the discontent do? What do the overall masses, what do the larger number of black people conclude? And they always come to find that if there is some black uprising, black upheaval, black hostility, black countermeasures, black insurgencies, that they understood that the vast majority of black people would not support a black individual or black factions taking hostile actions against the state. Most black people, even if they are fully discontent with the status quo, will not take any extra legal or unsanctioned action within the status quo, meaning that most black people who are discontent will only lash out by means dictated and authorized by the state. And in order to move us forward or to move us in any direction, we have to define where we are. And one of the ways that you're able to create a movement and become a prominent black person like Kevin Samuels or Dr. Fubar or Tariq or what's her name, Yvette Carnell, is if you don't define where black people are, then your movement, you can move them in any direction and claims your movement. What are you doing? I'm doing something. And so there are a lot of movements, a lot of ideologies, a lot of goals and ambitions for African people that are not moving us towards liberation, but they're moving us. They're moving us. And I don't know if you've ever been arrested or you've ever been in any uncomfortable position, but if you notice people that are in very uncomfortable position, they're in constant motion. You know, they're moving back and forth, they're jittering, or they'll get up. I was one time detained. There was this little protest at the school. And they came in and just sat everybody down and trying to sort who was. Some people did some things they shouldn't have done. I ain't saying who, but they detained a couple of dozen students because we were, what did they say? They got us with trespassing. I think that's all everybody. They just knocked it down to trespassing and paid a small fine, but they didn't suspend. But anyway, everybody was moving. We were all in this small room on campus. I didn't even know the fucking campus had a detention center on the campus. They had us in this room and everybody was moving. And I kind of stopped moving. They didn't gas us. They didn't billy club. They just took us in this room and like, y'all wait here. We figure out, sort out, or bring out a couple of people, see if somebody tell who did this action, unauthorized protest, I think what they called it. But anyway, everybody was moving. I was kind of sitting, and this was like my first time being part of something like that. And I'm like, everybody's moving. If you've ever been inside of jail, it's constant noise and constant motion, or just read. Don't go to jail. Take my word for it. Go read George Jackson. There's like this noise and this constant energy. So but you notice when people are comfortable. I used to watch those mafia movies. And it was always to me when I'd see the mafia Don or the crime boss, and he'll be in a Speedo sitting on a lawn chair by the pool with a cigar and a martini. And then all these guys are standing around him in suits with machine guns. And I'm like, how are you relaxed and chilling with all these people posted up around you like that? Like me, I can't be comfortable if people around me aren't comfortable. I can't be chill. And that always blew my mind. That always blew my mind. That people who can be motionless and still and calm around people who are up and tense and moving. But that's me. But it's kind of like that for individuals, but it's also like that for collective. Black people are always in a movement. We've always got something going. If you're a black person who ain't got something going, and it ain't just black power. If you go to if you make any profession or any assertion around black, what are you doing? And everybody wants to run down their pedigree and their resume. I'm in here doing this in the street. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. But it's not just that. If you go to the entrepreneurial crypto blacks, they'll be like, yeah, I got this business. I don't sleep. I'm grinding. I hustle. If you go amongst church people, what have you done for the Lord in the name of the Lord? I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing. You'll find that we want to be identified as not being slothful, being content, being motionless, being still. And a big part of that is the racist stereotype that the people who built this country are a bunch of lazy people seeking handouts. And another part of that is we are not comfortable. We are not welcome. We do not control the space we dwell. We are under relentless attack by the formal and informal culture and practices of not only the government, but private industries. So we're in constant movement. But when you have a mass of people in constant movement, anybody that's moving us can be looked at as doing something positive. So you have black people like, oh, you can't criticize because there's one person who wants to create an Islamic theocracy, but you can't criticize him because he's doing something. And this other person who wants to create black capitalism or resurrect black wealth, you can't criticize him because he's doing something. Or this other hippie who wants to go create his own little tranquil utopia, his vegan spiritual utopia in the tropics. He's doing something. So we're moving and everybody's busy. And like the Jungle Brothers said, no, De La Soul. Like De La Soul said, there's a lot going on and ain't a damn thing happening. We are moving fast as fuck and getting absolutely nowhere. And that leads me into Kevin Samuels. And the reason I was thinking about Kevin Samuels because